Israel today occupies parts of Lebanon, parts of Syria, all of mandatory Palestine, and we don't know where it is supposed to end. But the basic doctrine of Netanyahu is that's Israel's choice, not anybody else's choice, and that when push comes to shove, the United States will back Israel's choice because the United States is basically under the control of a Zionist Christian and Jewish and Israeli lobby that will come to run to support Israel's actions. We're watching this play out in an astounding way. Israel this year has been at war in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. You just can't make this up.
Hearing this laid out so plainly is deeply unsettling. As someone who's followed global affairs for decades, I've watched how these patterns repeat. Smaller nations get entangled in larger power games with devastating human costs. What's particularly alarming is how normalized this has become in Western discourse. The assumption that Israel can expand its reach with the unwavering support of U.S. policymakers, regardless of the consequences for the region. We're not talking about isolated incidents anymore. We're watching a dangerous long-term strategy unfold, one that risks destabilizing not just the Middle East, but potentially drawing in global powers in ways that could spiral far beyond anyone's control.
What is their theory of war? The theory of war is distinctive. Israel is a small place. It's got less than 10 million people, or about 10 million people. Uh, Iran has more than 90 million people. What is the theory? The theory is assassination and regime change. So the idea is decapitation rather than on the ground military invasion. The idea is get rid of Saddam Hussein and Iraq becomes an Israeli vassal. Get rid of Muammar Gaddafi and Libya becomes an Israeli vassal. Get rid of the great leader, and then Iran serves Israel's purpose. This by itself is a kind of madness. This is a true insanity. And we don't have to look further than the results of Netanyahu's wars. Did Libya fall into shape? No, Libya fell into nonstop violence since 2011, into open war, not into vassalhood of Israel. Did Somalia fall into place as Israel wanted? No, Somalia fell into chaos. Did Sudan fall into place when America overthrew the Sudanese government by supporting the South Sudan rebellion? No. Amazingly, Sudan not only fell into two, but each of those two parts is in civil war today. Did Lebanon stabilize? No. Did Syria stabilize? Well, it's, yes, maybe now a jihadist state under Israel control temporarily. That seems to be the case. Did Iraq? No. Saddam Hussein's departure did not create a vassal state, although it created an occupied state. So the theory of change is assassination and decapitation, Mossad led rather than on the ground.
This strategy of decapitation, of removing leaders rather than engaging in ground invasions, might seem efficient in theory, but history has shown it rarely delivers the intended outcome. Iraq, Libya, Sudan, none of these interventions led to stable pro-Western states. If anything, they've fostered power vacuums, prolonged chaos, and fueled resentment that outlives any single regime. It's astonishing how little these lessons seem to inform current decision making.
And I think that this is the theory of change for Iran as well.
To burn down what was there and hope that something better will come in place.
Well, they not just hope, they believe in their arrogance that they can run the show. History has shown, and this was the classic understanding from World War II onward. Aerial bombardment does not lead to regime change, first of all. And second, even if you do assassinate leaders, maybe you can postpone or delay their actions a bit, but you don't get the kind of political control that you believe that you will. The basic idea of the United States, Britain, France, especially, if there is an idea. These are three imperial powers.
This is a sharp reminder that many Western leaders still operate with a Cold War era mindset, believing they can dictate outcomes unilaterally. But the world has changed. We're no longer in an era where a handful of Western capitals can redraw borders and topple governments without consequences. Multipolarity is here, and failing to acknowledge that only escalates risk.
The idea is we determine the bottom line. So we are the ones that determine the outcomes of a conflict. That's the mindset. Of course, they don't. This is the post-imperial, post-Western imperial world, but the Western imperial powers believe that they determine the outcome. And so in the case of Ukraine, the idea has been, well, yes, there will be a ceasefire, but according to Macron, say, or Starmer, NATO will enlarge and Russia will have to accept X, Y, Z, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so forth. And so there's no attempt to get to the core politics at all. In the Middle East, the same is true. The unspoken part of all of this is Israel's claim to have its say and way in the Middle East in terms of territory, in terms of crushing, even exterminating the Palestinian people. If that's what it came to, I think that they would not hesitate to do it, as they have shown in Gaza. That's the unspoken part. So the Western side, these imperialist powers, think that the idea is to impose that outcome. Maybe they quibble about the tactics. But what was fascinating to me in terms of political rhetoric, although not surprising, Israel attacks Iran. And what happens in the rhetoric of all of the West, so-called, these G7 countries? The immediate response is not Israel should not have attacked Iran. The immediate response was Israel has the right of self-defense.
The level of rhetorical gymnastics here is staggering. Israel launches a strike during ongoing negotiations, yet the dominant Western response is to demand restraint from Iran. This isn't diplomacy, it's blind allegiance. And it sends a dangerous message that one party operates with impunity while others are held to impossible standards.
It's so surrealistic, so Orwellian, that it doesn't even pass the propaganda test for 5 seconds. But this is exactly what happened the day after Israel's unilateral attack in the context of negotiations to end Iran's nuclear weapons program definitively with international monitoring, was not to say, why did Israel do this in the context of ongoing negotiations, or Israel shouldn't have done this, or Israel even did do this. The politics that Europe displayed in the UN Security Council, as I nearly fell off my chair at each statement, was that Iran must not escalate. And some of the ambassadors speaking, for example, the absolutely shameless presentation by the Danish ambassador on the Security Council, didn't even mention that Israel had attacked Iran. This is the UN Security Council. They couldn't even figure out the day that they were there, the day after a unilateral, unprovoked attack in the context of negotiations, that Israel had attacked Iran. The only statement made by the ambassador of Denmark was that Iran was out of compliance with the IAEA, as if Israel, it's not, Israel isn't even a signatory to the IAEA and is the nuclear power of the region and never allows inspections. But the Danish ambassador only attacked Iran for being out of compliance.
It's hard to watch respected international institutions become little more than echo chambers for one-sided narratives. When even neutral forums like the UN Security Council can't acknowledge plain facts, we lose the very mechanisms designed to prevent global conflicts from spiraling out of control.
Without noting the negotiations, and still less without even mentioning that there had been an attack by Israel on Iran that day, and statements by the Israeli leadership that it would kill the leadership of Iran. No one said boo about that. So this G7 is pathetic. You know, Trump came, he went, didn't matter. It's pathetic. Then one of them posts something, Macron, and Trump disses the post of Macron. These are children that have no respect for us as citizens. And this is sad because these children don't know how to play together. I don't even among themselves, much less with the rest of the world. But they have their hands on the nuclear arsenals that can destroy all of us, and we don't hear an honest word about it.
This is perhaps the most terrifying aspect. These are not just political squabbles. These leaders control weapons capable of ending civilization. And yet, instead of sober, grown-up dialogue, we see juvenile posturing, short-term calculations, and astonishingly little public debate about the long-term consequences.
If history can be our guide, and it's a very imperfect guide to be sure, because every circumstance is different, the current approach will fail. Either the military bravado by itself will fail because Israel will not have the wherewithal, or even Israel and the United States will not have the wherewithal to defeat Iran.
The hubris here is breathtaking. Iran is not Iraq or Libya. It's a large, resilient, and highly sophisticated nation. Any belief that a few targeted assassinations or airstrikes will subdue such a country shows a dangerous disconnect from reality.
That's possible. I'm unfortunately not enough of a military expert to give any authoritative reading on that. But we do know the vastly exaggerated estimations of Western military power is part of this story. The United States has not won wars for decades. Sometimes it's had military victories, but it's rarely actually won a long war. And so from Afghanistan to Vietnam to countless other places, this kind of approach has not worked. And it may lose directly in the aerial battles and in the air defense and in Iran's ability to counterattack and destroy critical locations in populated Israel. It may fail just on that basis, or it may fail on the basis that the nuclear activities of Iran escalate in result and are not stopped by any of this, or in the fact that there is no regime change. They're trying, I think, a decapitation not only of the military and scientific leadership, but of the political leadership as well. This is likely to fail, but not impossible. This is an assassination machine. They have targeted drones to the apartment buildings and apartment floors and flats specifically. So they, with Mossad's methods, which is an assassination unit, they've made some progress. But that can fail, I think, is more likely than not to fail. Even if it were to succeed, it doesn't occupy a country of more than 90 million people. That is a big, spread out, diverse, and in many ways technologically sophisticated country.
Exactly. Toppling a leader may feel like a tactical victory, but governance, stability, and national identity don't evaporate with a drone strike. The sheer scale and complexity of Iran make this gamble not only reckless, but potentially catastrophic.
So rarely do a few airstrikes actually change the fate of politics or nations. It hasn't happened in most of the time. So I believe we're on a path of extraordinary risk and danger and typical bravado and overestimation of Israeli and Western capacity. That has been the general rule, overestimation of what the Western advantage brings, because the most fundamental factor of our world today is multipolarity. It is that the Western dominance, these G7 leaders, do not run the show and do not have the decisive military advantage to run the show. But in the end, each of these blows and the counter blows bring us closer to nuclear annihilation, because the even more fundamental truth is that we have nuclear arms all over the place. And not only does Iran have Russia as a backer, it also has Pakistan as a backer. And the idea that this is just a unilateral show of nuclear armed Israel versus the Islamic world, versus Iran versus the Arab world, this could really get us all killed, this kind of delusion.
What strikes me most is Sachs's final point, the delusion that this can be managed, contained, or controlled. We're talking about multiple nuclear powers intertwined in a region already brimming with unresolved conflicts. This isn't just Middle East policy anymore. It's a global security crisis in the making. The margin for error is razor thin, and the cost of miscalculation could be irreversible for all of us. We desperately need cooler heads, honest dialogue, and a serious reckoning with the limits of Western power in a multipolar world.